So, one of the biggest pieces of news that we missed in the last couple weeks, it's still relatively relevant. I think he was only hired 6 days ago. But Bill Belichick, the second winningest coach in NFL history, who has won 6 Super Bowls with the Patriots, is leaving the NFL. He's not coming back to the NFL as everybody thought. Instead, he is becoming a college football coach for the first time in his life, heading to the University of North Carolina to become the head coach of the Tar Heels. Now, this is a move that came out and it was fairly shocking. I mean, I think the kind of conventional wisdom was that Bill was always heading back to the NFL, and the first hiring cycle didn't necessarily work out, but it's just a flash in the pan. And he just got fired. He's going to take a year off from the game and come back. But indications were no, that wasn't the case. Indications from what I've heard is that Bill Belichick kind of had a bit of a preview into what the coaching market would be and kind of talked around and gauged interest in what some of the open jobs might be. And he wasn't getting a lot of interest back. And so it seems like he took matters into his own hands and is headed to Chapel Hill. Now, this I think is interesting for a great many reasons. It's just one, just because it's just a weird move and a weird thing to see. But I think the biggest thing is for Bill Belichick, as a guy who is notoriously tough, notoriously old-fashioned, and notoriously strict, is his style going to work in college football, where it's a bunch of guys straight out of high school who are now, in this specific climate, getting paid millions of dollars in NIL money? Will Bill Belichick's hard coaching style work in college football? What do you think?
Well, I mean, you can go right back to what a lot of his former players have even said in the last few days since the announcement was made. I remember seeing a video of Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, and I think it was Edelman talking about it, and it was a resounding no. It's not going to work. Nobody can imagine this old guy sitting on some like high schooler's couch trying to talk them into coming to Carolina. That's just not going to happen. Like, I mean, there's two sides to it as well, though, because I've heard a lot of people say or make the argument that people are going to want to play for Bill Belichick. He might not have to do that. Like, there's going to be a lot of kids who grew up watching the Pats, like dominate, grew up watching Tom Brady. They're going to want to go over and play under Bill. And, I mean, I don't know. To me, I think it kind of levels out, at least for recruiting, at least in my opinion. I think there's going to be enough people who want to come in, even if Bill's not going to suck up to them. They're going to want to come in anyway, just to get. Hopefully, they have that drive to win. Hopefully, they have that drive to learn from somebody who's been there and done that at the highest level. But on the other side, I think it'll just be a question of, does his coaching style even still work? Will that work at the college level? I think that's more interesting to me. I mean, getting the players, he'll get the guys. If they're willing to pay to bring in Bill Belichick, they're going to be willing to pay to bring in some good guys for him to play under him. I think it'll just be more interesting to see whether the style that he's going to want to play is going to work with all these young guns.
Yeah. And I think it's really funny because it's almost the reverse. It's almost the reverse Pete Carroll in a way when Pete Carroll went to Seattle,
Yeah.
because one of the big criticisms of Pete Carroll was when he came to Seattle was, oh, he's just a college coach and his like rah rah, like energetic style isn't going to work in the NFL. And it turned out it did, and he won a Super Bowl and was a fantastic coach for 10 plus years. But who knows if that goes the other way, because Bill Belichick has become almost the opposite of Pete Carroll in every way except for age. And now he is going to that college environment where you kind of need those like motivators, it seems like, and you need these very high energy guys. I mean, look at a guy like Dan Lanning in Oregon, like, where he's doing shit like throwing the University of Washington helmet and smashing it before the games, and his whole like before
That's
the Colorado game last year, they're playing for views, they're playing for clicks, we're playing for wins.
That's a part
Can you
of
see
college
Bill
sports. That's just a part
Yeah,
of
can
the
you
energy,
see Belichick
right?
doing that?
Although,
I
you know
can't see
what?
Belichick doing that in a million years.
I want to see Bill Belichick with like the hoodie up, looking like goddamn Palpatine on the sideline, doing like a little shimmy to like some hype music. I see that, and I'm gonna know it's working. That's what I need to see. I don't need to see anything else out of Bill Belichick. I don't need to see him like giving these crazy speeches or anything like that. I just want to see him kind of enjoying it. You know what I mean? I honestly think that I feel like I'd be more worried if we start to see Bill Belichick trying to do all of that crazy stuff. I just want to see him having fun. I think if we see him having just a little bit, which we won't, but if we start to see him having a little bit of fun while coaching, I think that'll be a good sign for Carolina here.
Yeah. But I think it'll be interesting to see if he can channel that version of himself. Because I think college football is a completely different landscape now, and I don't know if he's fully suited or ready for it. You look at, I think one of the things I've been struck by most is Nick Saban, like what Nick Saban's experience was like at the end of his experience with Alabama, and part of the reason he left Alabama was because of NIL and because he's told stories about going to recruit college kids and them essentially being like, how much money are you giving me? And it being all about the money, and that really disenchanted him. Is that something that's going to disenchant Belichick as well? Is that something that's going to be difficult for him to
Are
deal
you
with?
telling
How
me
much
that's
is
not something he had to deal with at the NFL level? It's just making the college level more pro, arguably.
That's true. That's true. Maybe it's even more fitting to him at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe that part works to his advantage. But at the same time, I think just the general machinery of recruiting, I can't see him doing. Like,
No.
I think it's going to be hard to imagine that. And I saw they hired, I think college football is kind of going more, it's becoming more like the NFL, where they're, in previous years, it would be like just the head coaches are doing the recruiting and the signing of the players, and they act essentially as both head coach and GM. But that's more teams in college are starting to hire GMs in addition to the coach to deal with all this NIL stuff as it's getting more complicated in this new age. And I think that North Carolina did the same. But it'll be really interesting to see that balanced with Belichick's desire for control, because that was a big thing in terms of why he wasn't getting another NFL job. Was there was rumors that he wanted control of both the coaching side and the player personnel side. All that to say, what do you kind of view his role as? Do you think it'll be kind of just a coaching side, or is it going to be the player personnel side too? Because I think one works better than the other at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. I think he's definitely going to have a hand in the player personnel side. I think he has to, right? Why else would he go?
Yeah.
Like, why would he say no to a bunch of NFL jobs where they're saying that they just want him to coach, just to go down to UNC to have the same requirements and go, whatever. Like, that's not how it works. I'm sure that there's, even if he has a general manager, I'm sure he's going to have a say. And I don't know how much UNC is going to be mad about that, truthfully. I think it'll probably, they're hiring him for a reason. They're taking a risk here. And the convenient thing for them is it is only a 3-year risk. And even if it isn't going their way, I mentioned it to you before. I was reading an article about how easy it is to buy out his contract, which I think was sort of done on purpose, obviously, with the fact that, there is a lot of questions as to whether it would work. It's funny that all of us have all of these doubts surrounding one of the greatest NFL coaches of all time, but at the end of the day, he has no college experience. We talked about that before. He's got no college wins under his belt. You got to treat him like any other college coach who has no wins under his belt, to a certain degree at the very least. Because, I mean, it is two different games.
Yeah, and there's reason to be concerned, because I think a couple of things you brought up there, you mentioned why would he choose this over the NFL. That's the thing to kind of go back to at the start. I don't think he did. I think this might have been his only option.
No, yeah, for sure.
I think if he wanted to get into coaching, I think the NFL said no to him. Because, and I think this is part of it, because I think you're right overall in terms of, like, I think he is going to have a hand in player personnel, even if there is a GM role there, because I don't foresee that happening. He's going to want that, and I think they're going to give it to him. But I think a big part of the reason that NFL teams don't want him is because they don't want to cede over that player personnel control, because he wasn't very good at it. Like at the end of the day, Belichick the GM was nowhere near as good as Belichick the coach, and Belichick the GM continually let Belichick the coach down. So it'll be very interesting to see how that dynamic plays out, because I think the more control he has over that side, the worse they're going to be.
I guess the question is, does that change though at the college level? Like, I mean, if he's not going to be the guy sitting recruiting people, Does that change? Like, is his ability to scout high school guys better than his ability to scout college guys? As silly as that sounds,
Who
right?
knows?
Like,
Who knows?
because I mean, at a certain degree, I don't know. I guess it's gonna be curious to see what his pull is. Is it gonna be like the Deion Sanders type effect where people just want to play for him because he's Deion Sanders? Like, are people gonna want to play for Bill Belichick just because he's Bill Belichick? Like, is there going to be a massive pull to go play in Carolina now that they have this legendary coach? Because you got to look at the age of a lot of these players. A lot of these guys who are coming to these teams, they're our age. They're guys who grew up watching.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, me and you both hate the Patriots from that era, but no, that's not the case for everybody. There's a lot of people our age who grew up loving those teams, right? So you got to wonder if some of those people are looking at it and going, "This is my chance to go learn under the guy who taught my goat." This is my chance to go do that, right? You got to wonder if that's a thought in a lot of people's heads and whether there's going to be a massive vacuum over there. I don't know. That's partially why I don't necessarily care whether Bill Belichick's going to be sitting on a couch in some kid's basement. Or living room. That's not going to. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I think UNC knows that too. Like, sure, they have a general manager, so he can go do that, but Bill doesn't need to do that. I don't think that matters as much as people are giving it merit to.
Yeah. To kind of further your point, Bill Belichick has kind of already had a recruiting victory here, where he, looking at this article from The Athletic a couple days ago, there was Bryce Baker, who's a top 100 quarterback in this most recent class, committed to North Carolina, apparently after one phone call with Bill Belichick, where he was leaning towards committing to Penn State, and then he got on the phone with Belichick and decided to commit to North Carolina. And he talked a lot about building his legacy, and I think that's kind of going to be the pull for Belichick here, like you were saying, right? And he said, walked away from the call with a strong feeling about how the former Patriots coach would prepare him to be a professional.
I mean,
so I think
like,
the logic is sound. The logic is sound there, right?
yeah.
But it'll be interesting how it works. Because I think the other thing is that Bill Belichick obviously brings a lot of prestige. North Carolina as a football program doesn't necessarily. They're very much not a blue chip football program at this point. They're very much middle of the pack. They had a losing record in conference play this year. It'll be interesting to see if he's able to turn it around in the 3 to 5 years that he has.
Yeah. No, it is going to be. Is it 3 to 5? Really? I thought it was only 3. I guess he could come back.
So he has 3. He has 3 years guaranteed. The contract is for 5 years,
okay,
but only 3 years are guaranteed. So that's why it's like very easy to get out after 3 years, because the rest of it isn't guaranteed. But the contract is for 5 years.
Oh, okay. So there you go. I mean, I guess we'll see. I guess then the final question I'll ask you is, do you think I already have a firm opinion on this. Do you think it matters at all for Bill Belichick's legacy whether he succeeds or not at the college level? It's a silly question.
I don't think it does. I don't think it does. I think I'll kind of lead with my reason why not, and then to just kind of say something to that. I don't think it does at all. I mean, he's already won 6 Super Bowls. I think he could never coach it. I think he could never coach another game of football again, and he'd be set, pretty much set in stone. I think he still wants to prove people wrong. I think this maybe is a part of that, to give him a new environment and say, hey, look, I can do it here too. I can create a winning culture in this new environment as well. So that might be part of it. But I think even as this experiment claims out, he's got that. I mean, like, some of the past, like, legendary coaches have had kind of, like, jobs that they've had down the string where they didn't necessarily pan out. Like Vince Lombardi, I believe, is the coach of the then Washington Redskins at the end of his career, and nobody thinks about that. And I mean, like, you see that with players too, where it's like Joe Montana going to the Chiefs, or there's a million other examples out there, but nothing coming to mind. I don't think that's going to matter. The one thing that might matter in terms of legacy is the all-time wins record. which he's currently behind Don Shula in the NFL for. And I think that's
Do
a
you
big
think
reason
he
why
can
people
get back to
thought
the NFL?
that's the question. And maybe
Yeah.
that's a question I'll pose to you because I think that's an interesting part of it, and that's why a lot of people were surprised because it's very attainable, and he'd probably only need to coach 2 more seasons in the NFL to get there.
Yeah.
Because that's a pretty big deal.
I think this is a sign more than not that he definitely thought that there's no way that he was getting back. I guess the question is, after 5 years, let's say everything goes right. Like, everything at North Carolina goes perfectly, and he's got NFL teams calling in 5 years. I have a really hard time even imagining then that. I don't know. How old would he be at that point? He's got to be getting.
He's 77.
He'd be 82.
No, he would be 77.
Oh, he would be.
He's currently
Okay.
72.
Oh, I
He's
see.
currently 72. He would be 77.
That's he'd be getting up in there. That's tough.
Yeah.
That's really tough. I don't know. You never know, right? You can't necessarily count him out on it, but I would certainly put my chips on no. I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah. No, it's interesting.
Yeah,
you wonder if that 3 years isn't for UNC, but maybe it's for Belichick to get out and pursue that NFL gig. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. You never know. It's certainly not it's certainly not impossible, I guess, but I mean, it even seemed like the Pats held on to him for 3 years too long towards the end there.
Yes.
It wasn't a surprise to me, at the very least, that he didn't go anywhere. I don't know.
Yes.
It's going to be tough.
No, it is. But I mean, if anything, it at least makes North Carolina football more interesting. Like I'll be way more inclined to tune into a random fucking like North Carolina Wake Forest game in the middle of October just to see that like weird ass crap. But it'll be interesting, and I think especially after his first season to see how that goes. I think there should be if he's able to institute a culture that's similar to the Patriots, I think we should expect to see immediate results. Like I think that's the goal.
The only question is, can he coach players as old as his girlfriend? Let's find out. That is the only real question. I mean, we now know how long has that relationship been going for now? A year? He's been doing it for a year already.
Maybe that's why he's dating her. Maybe that's it's been scouting for his new college.
It's scouting. Oh my god.
Oh. This is why he's next level. This is why he's won 6 Super Bowls.
Oh, you might just be right.
Above and beyond.
That's how I know he's the greatest coach of all time. Ain't nobody else will.
Yep.
Shula? You think Shula was out there doing that towards the end? Hell no.
No.
Shula doesn't have the game.
No, absolutely not.
And that has 2 different meanings. All right, whatever. Heisman next.